Loving all the things coming through the chat. So beautiful. Byron Bay, Johannesburg, South Africa, Chicago. Look at all this global goodness. Wow. So beautiful. Amazing. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. I think that we are here now live with everyone from all around the world. I'm seeing everywhere from California to Byron Bay to Spain. So beautiful to see this global convergence of beautiful human beings in this community. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Tori. I'm the Director of Community here at Farmers Footprint. And I'd love to welcome everyone to this very special gathering today. We are humbled to share our reflections on this past year, as well as our vision for a regenerative future with you. And importantly, and maybe most importantly, we're excited to practice gratitude for each of you, our wonderful community. So it's without further ado, I'd love to bring up and say hello to Zach Bush, MD, co-founder and chairman of the board, and David Leon, co-founder and executive director of Farmers Footprint. It's an honor to have you both joining us here today. Thanks so much for being here.
It's exciting to be with this community. I love watching that texture pop up. It's like looking at the face of humanity here, and you guys are all representing an equal and opposite reaction to the last couple of years of isolation, and you are connecting. So thank you for connecting. We're thrilled to be with you. David and I have been on a huge adventure with a huge team around us that has just heightened everything you ever dreamed that this organization would come to, and it's our joy to share with you a little bit of that journey today on how this team has come around us and how this global community has come to surpass all of our expectations to create and engender a hope in us that I think at the outset I was not expecting. I think I had a desperate sense of the end. I was staring at the sixth extinction and this desperate sense of like, we have got to get this message out there. We're killing people on the planet, and so I wanted to give you a little bit of a glimpse into that origin story and the adventure that we had before we knew there was going to be an organization like Farmers Footprint, and how that came to be, because it has a lot to do with all of you.
Yes.
And where we're going.
Zach, thank you so much. I'm so excited to jump in there so shortly. Thank you. And David, what's going on? Hello. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. So good to be here. Excited to speak with all of you and see all the familiar faces and names I'm seeing in the chat from all over the world. Super inspired and happy to be here.
Absolutely. Amazing. Well, we're going to pass it over to you two soon, because I know that is the excitement and kind of main entree today. But to really ground us before we kick things off, I'd love to introduce each of you or reintroduce you to the incredible work of Robin Wall Kimmerer. Robin is a mother, a scientist, a decorated professor, and an enrolled member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation. In her novel, Braiding Sweetgrass, which we've actually been having the joy and privilege of reading in the community's book club recently, she speaks to the necessity for humankind to be rejoined with its relationships to nature and to understand the implications of the Earth's gifts and our responsibility to return these gifts. I'd love to just share a quick quote with you guys, if that's all right. It's just so beautiful. It touched me so deeply. So here we go. She quotes, "The essence of the gift is that it creates a set of relationships. The currency of a gift economy is, at its root, reciprocity." And she also asks us to bestow our own gifts in kind, to celebrate our kinship with the world. If all the world is a commodity, how poor we grow. When all the world is a gift in motion, how wealthy we become. End quote. So just to open things up and kick us off in that way, her words just bring out this beautiful sense of just humanity and connection. And I love how she points to the power of gift to invite in deeper relationship with each other. She kind of shares this short story that I'll share with you now, just how when you buy a pair of socks, you may thank the cashier when you pay them, but that's kind of where the relationship starts and ends. You're not really thinking too much about the hands that tended the soil, that grew the cotton that was spun into keeping your toes warm. And then there's another situation where perhaps, your grandma knits you a pair of socks and it invites in that deeper relationship. You have in your mind's eye that she carefully selected the colors and spent hours making this garment with so much love, thinking about you the whole time. And then when her birthday comes around next year, you have this little inkling of feeling of, maybe I should make her something too. Like, she spent so much time. She loves me so much. It's in that giving, in that love, in that relationship, it can really create a sense of responsibility. So in that way, we just want to really say and name that we're so honored to receive the gifts of your precious resources of time and attention and perhaps monetary contributions today. We really view these gifts as an invitation to lean into deeper relationship with each of you. So thank you so much for being here. And then I'd love to just share out our intentions for today. They're pretty simple. We really just want to bring you closer to the work and the impact that we help to facilitate here at Farmers Footprint. So we're going to do that in two ways. First, we're going to spend some time with David and Zach, really sharing reflections from Farmers Footprint's journey to date, and then dream into that vision that we can unfold together in the coming year. And I don't know if you're like me, but I can't believe it's almost 2022. So let's all just take a seat in that and get along for the ride, I guess. Yeah, and then secondly, I think we're really putting out the intention to receive $25,000 in relationship with each of you. So at any point in this conversation, that call is open to head over to the left side of your panel that you're seeing on the stage and click that donate button. We've already raised over $6,000, and we're so humbled and beyond grateful that this community has already showed up in that sense. So thank you so much to each of you who have already left your footprint next to ours in the soil in that way. It's huge. We really can't put words to it, but it's beyond humbling. So we're going to kick things off. A few housekeeping notes just to always put it out there because we get so many questions on this. Yes, this conversation will be recorded and the replay will be shared out in the coming days. And we have time today to hear from Zach and David, but we will not have space for a Q&A. So if you have any comments, feel free to drop them in the chat. And if you leave the conversation with more curiosity or a burning question, feel free to drop me a note in the community, or also to reach out to info@farmersfootprint.us directly, which Matt, who is kind of manning the chat, can share out. So without further ado, I'd love to invite Zach and David to speak to the shared vision that originates from a deep practice of listening and translated via storytelling. And most importantly, it's really guided by each of you. So this community is so imperative to the work that we are doing. And I'd love to pass the mic over to you, Zach. Please take it away. Can you take us back in time to the origins of Farmers Footprints and how we arrived here today?
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much, Tori. Thank you for phenomenal grounding there. The Braiding Sweetgrass, if you haven't read it, dig into that book. It is a stunning look at the awareness of detail in nature as we have been given the gift to do with our human senses. And excited for you guys to experience that. It's right up there with The Call of the Reed Warbler and some of these other extraordinary textbooks in the regenerative environment that begin with a call, almost a spiritual call back to our roots. And I feel like that is how this org started. We did not think we were going to set out for a nonprofit. We set out to tell a narrative about glyphosate and Roundup with a desperate sense that, man, the world has got to know at a broader sense that this chemical that's imbued into our entire food and water system is killing our children and through lymphomas and leukemias, but also undermining the neurologic wellness of the entire country as well as the world around us. And so we have a desperate sense of need. And I apologize for air traffic here. It is a military aircraft, just to reassure you that the status quo is put here. So I may have used way too much hope already in the introduction here, and I'm bringing in the troops to settle this down. But the reality is we set out to tell a scientific story of this cross-section between human health and the planetary health around us, and how they are so interconnected to the microbiome and through ultimately the extraordinary protein structure that defines the gut barrier that actually defines our self-identity, our immune system's sense of outside and inside. Me and the outside world is defined by these barrier events that are in the protein structures of my gut, and they're undermined by this chemical. And so we set out to film from the headwaters of the Mississippi all the way down, or the Mississippi River, all the way from Minnesota all the way down to New Orleans at the foot of the river there. And that was our journey. We decided we were going to film, and we were hoping to collect water samples and tell the scientific story of the increasing amounts of glyphosate that come sweeping in from about 80-85% of that washout of that chemical around the country into a single water system. We really thought that that was a salient point. But the whole project really took a hard left turn on our very first farm stop. So we were up in Minnesota. We stopped through there for the first time in this brutally cold -9 degree February for kind of our exploratory trip to start to get acquainted with these farmers. And on the very first stop, we got to know Grant and Don, who are featured in the original Farmers Footprint documentary. And immediately, as every service project tends to end up, is those that want to go out and serve the world, as we did with this film, end up getting served something much greater, and you receive more than you give all the time when you're in the right space, I think. And we did get into the right space, and the right space in this case is typical of life in general, which is we shifted from a desire to tell a didactic story of science and everything else to one of listening, and we realized that we were missing the entire big picture by being reductionist. I think my male archetype had really fully taken over this story of a chemical that was undermining life. It was really about lives that were being lived that allowed this chemical to infiltrate our lifestyles to begin with. And it was about a lifestyle of pursuit of centralization and grander growth through the entire system of the economy of the agricultural and food systems that was driving this dependence on this chemical. And we listened to the farmers' stories as to how the cards had been stacked against them in forcing their decisions, rather than finding out that farmers were just, being lazy and didn't want to weed, so they were spraying this chemical. It wasn't that at all. We found out that there was massive infrastructure that had been set up in this kind of conglomeration between the financial systems of banks and the lending systems for capital for these farmers, and the regulatory environments around the USDA and the US government, and ultimately the Farm Bill. And it was through the introduction of this trap that had been set for them that we realized we had a much bigger crisis at hand. We had lost autonomy of farmers in this country nearly a century ago, if not longer ago. And in that, they have been handcuffed in their ability to co-create with nature, and they've had to shift, like I did with my colleagues. We've shifted from a sense of wanting to heal people, heal the planet, feed the planet, to one of chemical dependence, both in agriculture and in medicine. And so over that century, we lost our footing as farmers and physicians. And it was interesting to hear the predictions of our own extinction. I had been journeying around the country speaking about chemical poisoning of the plant, blah, 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 and saying that we had 80 years left of human fertility. And on that next trip through, as we were continuing to film, we got to sit with the Soil Health Academy and watch their presentation. And one of their first slides was that we have only 60 harvests left on Earth. And that's due to the rate of massive topsoil erosion that's going on globally. We've depleted 97% of all arable soils on the planet already. And so we have this crisis of soil fertility, soil nutrient density, and the rest. And so it's fascinating and frightening to see the 60-year prediction and the 80-year prediction of harvest versus human fertility line up so closely. And it was demonstrating yet again this focal point between human and planetary health. But it was also telling a very human journey of loss of connection. And as the farmers became more and more disconnected from their neighbors and more isolated, they became more and more vulnerable to these systems of control in the finance, regulatory, and governmental environments. And I think that we could say the same for the last 2 years as we look across the world. Wow, we have really become isolated in an accelerated fashion, and we've become more vulnerable, therefore, to financial, regulatory, and governmental control. And that just is a phenomenon that is a true statement for nature. Whether your politics are one way or another is irrelevant. This is the phenomenon of human isolation, as we become vulnerable at the immune system level to attack. And that attack is not something exogenous. It's really the attack of the human mind. And I believe that what we saw across the farming world was a state of disempowerment, where the human mind had lost its ability for creativity, and the attack was one of self-abuse, and the farmers were committing suicide at a rate that was, even at that time, unbelievable. And of course, that's just accelerated over the last couple of years since launch of this effort. And so we were seeing a crisis state of the trap of the human mind, the attack of the human mind on the spirit of humanity. And I want to, make it clear to you that we didn't find the path forward, but the farmers were showing us the path forward. They literally said, if we had structures in which we could make free decisions around soil management and everything else, and they really had the pieces that were there. They just needed somebody to start coming alongside of them to tell their stories and show this path forward and begin to co-create a new ecosystem around the farmers that would allow them to succeed. And so at no point have, myself or David or anybody else on this team solved for any problem. The farmers have always told us the problem and the solution, which interestingly was the line from my first 20 minutes of medical school. The dean came in, sat down in front of me, first year med student, nervous as hell. And he said, going to tell you two things. Number one, 50% of everything we're going to teach you in the next 4 years is wrong. Unfortunately, we don't know which 50% that is. And the second thing he said was around that same phenomenon of, if you sit long enough with your patient, they will tell you their diagnosis and they will tell you their treatment. And that was the last truth that I heard over a 4-year period, by the end of which I was trained to get that visit down to 4 to 6 minutes and tell them exactly what was wrong with them and exactly what was going to be treated, which had been decided before I ever sat down with that patient. And so the farmer and the physician have been trained to stop listening to the environment, to our focus of our work, either the field or the patient. And so this journey for me has been one that has been so humbling, because I learn more than I give every day. And I learn certainly from the farmers, but I am overwhelmingly taught by this team at Farmers Footprint. This organization has created a gravitational pull of some of the highest vibration people I've ever known. They've shaped who I am today. They've challenged me over and over again to become a better person, to listen deeper to my own self rather than the programs running in my head. And I'm just inspired by each of you. This community around us has sprouted up through the Mighty Networks and Tori's efforts that she'll cover a little bit later, has just been so inspirational to be a part of and witness the truth flowing out of this whole community. We learn every day, and the stories we tell are just a reflected learning on our part. So that's how we came to be where we were. We realized we were going to have to shift directions, and I want to turn it over to David to share really the birth story of how did an organization, at its offset, we had a film, an initial narrative, we had a sense of some of the needs in the environment, the need for a change in ecosystem, but we didn't know how operationally that was going to look. And the last 2 years has been an extraordinary journey. David's leadership has been super appreciated, but again, I think what he's done best is listen to the industry at large to create what we have today. So taking it from the beginning of the org, David, I appreciate all you've done these last couple of years in steering this team forward and this global community bringing together. But let's get a little bit of viewpoint from you as to how that all came nuts and bolts.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Zach. Just to pick up on this thread, I think what I had pulled from that Genesis story, and as we sat down in those early months of 2019, and you had shared a little bit of that journey, and I had a chance to see sort of some of the early cuts of the film, I think what I pulled out was we are in a moment of translation, and that I, like so many of the supporters of this work, I was brand new to this space of food and agriculture. But as soon as you're presented with the human faces behind that the real human struggles that are going on to produce the nourishment that we all, many of us, have taken for granted all this time, as we've sort of grown up or lived our entire lives in an industrialized food system, is hey, I need to approximate a journey of learning and a journey of awareness for everyone that really was a reflection of the one that I had gone on, and that was initially shared with me as I first understood that story that Grant and Dawn shared. And what followed that first year was, a whole lot of resonance around what was, still a pretty new concept that I think Zach was instrumental in helping to communicate to a much larger audience, and that is that the health of our human bodies is directly related to the health of our soils. And these things this is our connection to land, is through our food and the way that we nourish ourselves. And that was something that was brand new to me, and I knew probably anecdotally that it would be new to so many other people as well. And so what we're going to be the ways that we're going to be able to welcome in as many folks into this, what I think is a universal coalition that it exceeds whatever your interests are in politics or the way we should be building up our society. There's just really food and our connection to it, and we in that. And so I was very interested in that. I was very interested in what are the ways that we can bring a lot of cross-sector expertise to be thinking about these really complex problems around food and agriculture. So, one of the things I had pulled from was there was here a doctor stepping out of the clinic, stepping across into the field, and sharing with a farmer that the way that they steward their land had dramatic consequences for the health outcomes of his patients, and that there was power in that metaphor. There was power in sharing something in a way that perhaps that farmer had never heard that before from a doctor, or had never fully understood that those consequences were sitting right there in what they were doing every day. And similarly, we all bring in those those powers with how we live our lives every day. And so regeneration really asks us to take a close look at what is the effect on the whole that we all have. And that's an invitation also to participate and collaborate. So year was a year of deep listening, and I had the opportunity to be in deep conversation with so many farmers, farm workers, stakeholders across the supply chain, and of course, all the supporters here of the organization that were reflecting, to me, how important this was to them, and how could we be of highest use. So that was really the first year. And the second year, we hit a global pandemic. We hit some major social justice issues that emerged to the surface, and these were hitting head on with the regenerative agriculture movement, connection to land, and sovereignty in the way that we feed ourselves and our communities. And so, where the first year we can really characterize as sort of an exuberance and awareness, the second year was a time for deep reflection and understanding, I think in a much deeper way, what our power really was as folks who were sharing stories, and stewarding a community along and learning with you all. So, coming out of that year, what we really had this last year, which was really exciting, was to be able to build in reciprocity with that community. And so, as Tori has done such an incredible job stewarding that farmers footprint community, you've also noticed this year that we've been in much deeper dialogue with you all around the programs that we're putting together, and we ultimately want this to be of service to as many people as possible. And so we've created sort of a hub for connectivity to the regenerative movement, and we want to just continually be valuable in pointing you in the direction where you feel you can have the most, that actually you don't have to be a farmer, that farmers are there playing a role, but all of us, whether you're in creative professions, technology professions, medical professions, we all need to find our place in this, and we all need to sort of step across from our world into the field and understand the power that we actually hold in our expertise and the experience that we've gained. So this is about building a global movement of participation, and storytelling is one of the ways that we do that. And clearly that's been a big draw to bring a lot of folks into the fold. So we're very excited to continue that, but we're also very excited to continue to develop new ways of working. And the community is one of those programs that we've taken very seriously. So I'd love to invite Tori to share a few words on the community that she's been stewarding and why that's such a priority for us.
Happily. Yeah, it's tough to fit into words, but I'll do my best, David. Because I think it's just such a shimmering reflection of the vast human mosaic of potential and possibility that all of you are representing, and truly everyone you know. So just to share like one of my favorite sayings, I don't share this out often, but it's something that, you know, guides my movements in this humble role, is that community is like gardening, not architecture. And I think that's so special in a way, because architecture, you know, you set a plan, you go out and execute it, and community is so much more experimentation and listening. Like you have to ask yourself those questions. All of us do within this space and within this community of, you know, who wants to grow here? And is it me? Is it someone else? What resources does each individual, you know, garden inhabitant need to flourish? And then really the beauty of it is the ecosystem that starts to evolve when we create those conditions for abundance. And it's such a beautiful circle and a group effort. So really like calling in and putting a spotlight today on the fact that each of you are what moves and guides not only the work of Farmers Footprint, but also the work of the world. You were built into this work from the beginning. You're at the foundations, you're the bricks and mortars, and you're integral to it. And I hope that each of you feel that in your bones, because it is so absolutely true. And I think the arc of community since I've been on board, and, you know, since before that, since so many of you have been along for this journey and this ride, potentially stewarding this work for a lifetime, potentially just hearing a podcast in the last month or so, at whichever point and stage that you are at, you know, this space, this community, this gathering really strengthened during the moments of separation, both physically and emotionally and spiritually of the last year. And I feel like that's been a huge catalyst moment for this group, as we've guided the energy of the org from the start, but really in birthing this virtual gathering space, and then with, you know, hopes to really invite and inspire and create those tendrils of connection that, you know, give you guys the strength to bring it into your own communities, which you're already doing in such incredible ways. Like speaking from just personal experience that I know is echoing in so many refractions in each of your experiences, the connections that have been made, the just conversations and actions that's happened through the community conversations, through farmside chats with farmers. How do we bring each individual person, whether they're a mother or a farmer themselves or an activist or someone who, you know, really identifies as a beginner but has that deep yearning to just get involved in some way? All of those are important seeds at the circle of the work that's happening here. And we need to be in generative debate and discourse and resource sharing around making that happen. So I just love the analogy and kind of the visual image of what happens on an individual level is reflected and magnified at a macro level. You know, it's happening in a really collective sense. We can't do any of this work in isolation. So I think it's just really, really beautiful and such an honoring moment to know that we're regenerating ourselves through this gift of connection and celebration amidst it all. If you guys haven't had a chance to drop into the community yet, it's free to join. It's there for you. And the ways that I've seen people use it and show up between, you know, kind of finding really fulfilling professional opportunities, volunteer roles, just connecting with one other person in that moment of like, wow, I'm not alone in this. That really shifts. I think that really, really definitely shifts so much of what's possible. So I just want all of y'all to be invited and feel really welcome. The heartbeat of this community grows stronger every single day. So keep sharing your gifts with each other in that virtual gathering space, in your own communities, in your backyards, with your families. We're all on this journey. I view this whole group, those that, you know, we're trying to reach through this like virtual screen to you today, but on the other end of it, we know as a human being that's in this relationship to yourself and to other and to land. And we're all navigating and exploring this really wild adventure together. So yeah, if we keep continuing to coalesce our resources and amplify this impact, the work that each of you are already doing is being accomplished in this thriving circle. So thank you.
It's such a good encapsulation, Tori. Thank you. The community has been a gathering place for the invitation that the stories present to everyone. And so last year we told over 100 stories of land itself, of of histories and contextualizing some of the modern day news. So that will continue to be a cornerstone of the work we do, because it is an invitation. And we don't develop programs with an idea towards a solution. We don't know the solution. We are here to collaborate with all of you, because everyone, again, has a stake in regeneration. Regeneration is really demanding that we be in relationship ongoing and persistently with one another and from the places that we reside. So we can both not occupy all of those places, only you can, and we can only do that together. So we get we try to create scale and impact out of the conversations and deep listening that we do with all of you. And it's as simple as that. And it's why the community has become such an integral piece of our growth going forward. And it's something that we're really grateful that we have. So I just want to run through really quickly, in addition to those stories you've seen, the Meet a Farmer, the Regenerative Rascals. We've started launching just this year a circle of creatives, and that is again to invite more voices in to share the various stories from their perspectives. We want to continue to be a hub for as wide a diversity of voices as possible. So you're hearing all sorts of different angles and views onto what the regenerative movement really means. It certainly can't come from us. And we're also working really hard. We have a really exciting program launching next year that the team has been working really hard on, calling it Empowered Storytelling right now. And this was really about, hey, we've developed a capacity to tell stories. We're only going to be able to feature a certain number of farmers every year on our platforms, and that's not what we want to limit our impact to. So Empowered Storytelling is going to be a educational platform, along with a sort of a creative agency for farmers to empower them and build capacity for them to tell their own stories. And we essentially want to build a community around that. This is based off some really great pilots that we've done. You may have caught the story with Maria Catalan. We built her website and a logo and a payment gateway for her to manage her CSA business better. She's an incredible Hispanic farmer up in Salinas, California, who had been running her CSA just on her phone. She speaks very little English, so her daughter had been translating orders via text and had grown this incredible organic farm business and feeding her community. And so we had seen that. We had just done, we gave over our Giving Tuesday to Indigenous Regeneration, which is a Kumeyaay tribe in Southern California that is making huge investments and efforts towards rebuilding a sovereignty in their food system for their reservation. And so, we encourage you to go and check out the story behind them. So we've been both imbuing them with the capacity to tell a story, to raise resources for themselves, and to build thriving farm enterprises. And so we want to continue to scale that sort of work. And that's not on the back of the Farmers Footprint platform. It's meant to be imbuing farmers with this capacity and power for themselves. And so this is the only way that we're going to touch all the places that we're ultimately going to need to touch. It's not going to come through a centralized nonprofit, frankly. We can just be a jumping off place for that. We could be a place for connection and community. That's where we're going to continue to invest these resources that you all are supporting us with. And so that is an ongoing dialogue that we are very excited to continue having with you all. And the last program I want to share, this is one we're calling Renourish Studio. We're very excited. It's an ambitious sort of studio that is going to invite some stakeholders within the capital allocation world, and we're going to be thinking about how to better invest capital resources from a regenerative living systems mindset. And so this has been what we view as a major sort of impediment to some of the scale that we're looking to do as we expand regenerative agriculture. And so we've brought on Lauren Tucker who previously came from as a co-founder of Kiss the Ground, who's come about to sort of rethink the ways that we can build financial systems and business models from a living systems perspective. And so this studio is going to convene bankers, investors, farmland managers, and pair them along with farmers and other folks in the supply chain and food systems. And they're going to be doing a deep 3-year dive grounded in on-farm experiences and deep regenerative philosophy, so that we could change the macro financial landscape of how folks invest in food systems. And so we think similarly, we've had a lot of folks coming across from the macro finance world and wondering, how is it that I had contributed to the system we have, and what sorts of changes need to happen? And so we're really looking forward to taking on this ambitious program to try to change the face of the way that capital is allocated in regen. So very excited to share more on that in the coming weeks as we get that started early in the next year. And we just wanted to tease it out for you here first.
Amazing. Thank you so much, David, for that overview, and Zach for really taking us back to the beginning and the deep listening that was a part of that and has continued to infuse everything that we touch and the way that we move in this work. So I'd love to really ask you a question, because I think that so much of the power of what is happening in empowered storytelling within Regenerative Studio, within the community, and the way that we storytell is in vision setting. So, and we're talking here today about shared vision. So I find that often, rather than solving for problems noticed in our shared world, how do we choose to create abundantly from a shared vision? And what does that look like? Like, how do we step into that space together? So I'd love to invite both of you to speak a little bit to your vision for the agricultural system and or beyond if Farmers' Footprints work was complete.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I think for me, that journey has been, continuing to morph over time, but there's themes that have settled in and have really stuck. And those themes tend to be one of natural law. The nature has provided the templates on how every system on the planet should be running, including human society, human finance, and all of this. And so Sarafa Group, my for-profit enterprise, as well as Project Biome nonprofit with Farmers Footprint, are really tip of the spear here project, which is, let's find ways for nature that has devised such incredible systems of adaptability and biodiversification in its quest for life, start to be the template for how these systems actually operate. And so it's been a real thrill to look at that. The traits that you see in biologic systems is always decentralized management. And so decentralized contributions to a finance system that would support agriculture, a decentralized system that would then push on to decentralize the chemical dependence that are being shipped in from a few 5 chemical companies that serve the world, to every farm providing its own nutrient diversity and creating its own nutrient bed in the form of regenerative compost systems, regenerative cover cropping, regenerative animal husbandry, the simple use of things like the roller crimpers. And so where you're starting to use nature as a template, how does she decentralize dependence into a co-creative process? And so I think that's really kind of the overarching goal for Project Biome, is how do we look at the systems and problems that have developed due to centralization, and then how do we deploy decentralized systems in them over time? David, take.
I'll jump across on there. Thanks, Zach. I mean, I think one of the things I'm constantly inspired by, and especially as I've been able to jump into conversation with microbiologists, climate scientists, atmospheric scientists, as they're sharing some of the measurements that they're taking coming off of regenerative systems or attempts at those systems, is that I grew up, like many of you, with this Darwinian view of the way that nature works, that the fittest survive, and that this is nothing but fierce competition. So much of Regen Ag is looking at biology of the soil, the complex interactions of that biology with plants and with ourselves. And what you can't help but realize is when you're looking with a high enough resolution, nature is not as competitive as we might think. It's actually radically collaborative. And so when I hear being inspired by some of the processes of nature, I say, how is it that we can be as radically collaborative as possible as we're trying to all shoot for this journey that we're on in Regen? And I don't think that journey, presupposes a destination. I think all it does is ask that we be in ongoing relationship, that we be in that journey. And I'll bring up one of the other, I think, really helpful pillars that we've built a lot of this organization's philosophy on is around progress over purity or perfection. And that so much of what we're trying to do is cultivate a sense of empathy for where all of us are currently at. Whether you're brand new to Regen, as a farmer, as a consumer, frankly, as a brand or a big corporation, that it doesn't matter if you're backyard bottling your honey off of your bees, or if you're Nestle. We are all on a journey, and the best thing that we could possibly do for one another is hold space for someone to take a first step. And so we've told stories not just of the perfection of Regen Ag being fully realized on a piece of land, and there's certainly folks who are a lot farther along than others on that, but we'll also hold folks for the giant California who are stewarding tens of thousands of acres and just wondering, what is it that I need to do first with everything else that I have to worry about here? We've been able to convene those conversations because we haven't put ourselves as, hey, if you don't do this, you're doing it wrong, and we're not going to have anything to do with you. We've been willing to sit at the table with every stakeholder, no matter where they are, and we want to share that idea with all of you as, potentially farmers or especially consumers, that we all want to be able to go to the brands that we love and respect, and they need to flip a switch and reach some level of perfection. And we need to have a little empathy and compassion for the fact that that's not easy to do overnight, and that we need to be there to support a graded journey over time. I think that's been a hugely important insight for us. And it's allowed us to be invited into a lot of the rooms where, frankly, a lot of our peers in this space maybe aren't invited to, because they take too hard of a line. And so we don't want to close any doors. And I've told the team many times, I would be happy if Monsanto invited me to go and sit at the boardroom and speak with them. I wouldn't turn that down based on some sort of ideological view that there's no way Monsanto will ever come around to my point of view. We need to be in that conversation. We need to be collaborating with everyone. There's no boundaries on the collaboration that we need to be seeking.
The continuation of that is, just watching the speed at which the human psyche is changing right now. And so while we set out with that intention, with the organization, I've watched David manage so many different rooms of very diverse groups of stakeholders, and a few of those rooms were super intense, where there was a lot of conflict, represented from decades of kind of heartfelt, differences in philosophy and everything else. And watch those melt in a room is one thing, but I think on the global level, we're now getting to see an extraordinary, journey of each individual. And so Monsanto as a company may have one ethos, but the fact is that company's made of a bunch of individuals who are being given every day in their lives the opportunity to jump in their psyche and in their kind of connection to a portal of consciousness into a bigger vibration. And my companies are at the for-profit level are full of people who've jumped out of the chemical industry and are now our best leaders in coming up with solutions to those industries. And so I'm always encouraged that there are humans at the root of every, institution that we see as darkness. Those are humans that are being given the opportunity every day because they are divine beings, because they are miracles in and of themselves, that they are alive at the tipping point of all things. It's exciting to understand that as these individuals transition through life, they're going to be seeing their own children, grandchildren with autism. They're going to start asking questions, and you just do not know who's going to be that open door to fundamentally change or take advantage of, institutional knowledge that they've been built over a 20, 30-year career, and see them jump across and serve over at Farmer's Footprint or something like that. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us to remember that humans are at the root of all things, and it's only in the isolation of the human mind that we tend to make short-sighted, decisions that are destructive to self, species, and planet. And so I love that, holding space for the new opportunity. And so as Monsanto became Bayer, as being pointed out here by Maria, it's so many of those people cycled through to become the FDA or USDA, and we see this, constant dance of peoples between this tight regulatory, banking, and governmental environments or pseudo-governmental agencies that have been dictating the current status quo. But in the same way, we could imagine those people starting to jump across into this regenerative space where we start to see human lives and human capital as the beginning point, and the human sovereignty movement begin in this space of a topic of food systems could actually become a human story and become a human mission to end the land grabs that corporations are doing all over the world right now. At grand levels, they're taking away more land, in the developing world right now than we ever have in some ways in the food systems in history. And so we're at a crisis of human abuse. We're at a crisis of indigenous abuse. We're at a crisis of human awareness at the hands of these, centralized systems that become monopolies by the fact that they're centralized. And so they start to behave like a centralized thing in that they are dogmatic. They tend to be, destructive to competition around them, destructive to new ideas, because of the nature of a board and private, stock or public stockholders. And we created systems that make these entities behave like they do, and they don't necessarily reflect the behavior of the individuals within. So I think in a time where we've never seen higher polarization in the world, it's critical that we just pour out an enormous amount of grace at the end of 21 on our families. We're about to get back together again in mass here in this next week. And I would ask that we move into it with a spirit of space for, alternate personalities and, perspectives and politics and medical and public health perspectives. And there's so much, it's a pressure cooker there. But if we move in and with the spirit of that grace and the spirit of forgiveness, we will reach far. And never before has it been more important that we let go of our polarization and become open to dialogue again. And so I'm just honored this team. I want to recognize Nicole Ragland, who is our filmmaker for the original film. Nicole really set us on track for this organization, in that she helped break my, kind of dogmatic mindset as, a didactic teacher and educator who was going to go out and teach the world about glyphosate. And she taught me to stop and listen on that journey into the film process. And once we became clear that we needed something much bigger than a film, and we needed to fundamentally change the entire ecosystem of the agricultural, and we were going to need orgs, and we were going to need for-profit solutions, and all of these new things that David's talking about that are being developed in 22, they came out of that original knowingness that this whole system is trapped. There's no single way out. We're going to need creative biologic systems to kind of come back into alignment with humanity. And so I'm eager for that to come to fruition. It's honor Nicole and bringing us towards that at the very beginning and becoming listeners. I want to recognize Hunter Davis, who was the guy behind the camera for the original film. He spent countless hours in frigid temperatures up in the Northeast and elsewhere, catching incredible footage of resilience of the animals and farmers in the wintertime and everything else. And so just had a blast working with the two of them in the creation of that original film. And then our storytellers of today, we want to honor Leah and Jesse Gardner and Leah Rasvich. They've been incredible for us. The two of these women have really been the heart and soul of the storytelling across the Meet the Farmer programs. And I want to honor Bjorn, who's been a huge part of envisioning the infrastructure around the empowered storytelling to allow these farmers to be able to build their own infrastructure of business communications and website design and online resources. Also recognize the whole Seraphic marketing team and that huge group, as well as the IT team that have been in support of the Farmers Footprint team. So just a huge shout out to dozens and dozens of people that have made the current programming what they are, and excited to see who's drawn to the next. So in closing thoughts for myself, I'm excited to imagine each of you becoming natices, these nodes of change that begin with your families in the next week, and around the holiday tables and around the work parties and everything else. I would invite you to begin to tell the regenerative stories of your own life in the context of those interactions, and invite people into the discussion of this. Invite people to Farmers Footprint or community, the Mighty Networks community that Tori has built. Get people involved in this space at that family and friends level, and then reach out if you haven't already and get connected to a farmer. If you are not directly connected to a farmer, you have no idea the potential that's in that experience. And so the power that it has for that farmer to hear from one person that they care about the person growing their food is overwhelming and can save a life, quite literally. There's one connection can stop a suicide because somebody is seen for a moment, and being seen, they find their own value again. And so reach out and support farmers in your area, in your neighborhoods, in your greater communities through CSAs, all those volunteer opportunities that are out there. Look for that opportunities to really connect directly. So have a joyful end of this year as you think about impact. It's going to go far beyond your continued financial impact. That's been huge for us. We couldn't have built any of this infrastructure, any of these teams, without your financial support. But it's really this greater community, this mycelial network of communication that we see you a part of. And so we see you, a biologic system around Farmers Footprint that's changing the ecosystem of our impact. And by doing that one person at a time, sitting in conversation, listening to each other's stories, listening to another perspective, you're empowering us to do our highest work. So thank you for all of these years of support. And I'll turn it back to you two for more thoughts. But just my deep gratitude to this whole community, and an expectation that you'll continue to blow up our opportunities beyond our greatest visions because of your capacity to change lives around.
Thank you so much, Zach. So beautifully said. You took the words and thoughts probably out of all of our hearts and minds in that way. So thank you so much for speaking to things the way that you do with such honor and heart. It comes right through. So unbelievably grateful. And just sending huge gratitude to each of you, Zach and David, to the 160 plus of you that are here with us today, live in this moment, and the hopefully thousands more that will have a chance to catch the replay. So like Zach mentioned so beautifully, the best way probably is word of mouth. Like spread this around, spread that love. If any part of your heart was tugged on today, speak to that. I think that translates in ways that we can't even truly fully imagine. We will be sending out the replay later this week, so please take a moment, just click forward on that guy to anyone that you care about that you think could, really be touched by this. And I wanted to just bring into the space virtually for a moment Lynn Twist, who is the co-founder of the Pachamama Alliance and the founder of the Soul of Money Institute. And we are so honored and blessed to have her on our board. And she really speaks beautifully to this concept of the power of reciprocity and how, from her firsthand experience, she's watched that energy flow through the act of giving. So to lovingly quote Lynn really quickly, she mentions that we find sufficiency and sustainable prosperity when we think of our resources as a flow that is meant to be shared, when we put our full attention on making a difference with what we have, and when we partner with others in ways that expand and deepen that experience. I just love that. I feel like the words of collaboration come through so beautifully in her words there. And that is such a deep and powerful invitation for each of you today to partner with us as we're, really aiming and gearing towards this end of year. We really, truly do need your help. So thank you so much for being the community that's here, whether it's your time and attention. That is a huge help. That is a resource that you can never get back. It is finite. And we are so honored to be sharing this space with you. If you do have the ability, head over to the donate section, see the donation page. And also, if you have any interest in connecting further to learn more about this work, feel free to reach out to Matt. Matt's going to drop his email within the chat. He's our director of development. If you have any questions about any of the finite details of that, feel free to jump into there. And then to just kind of piggyback on what Zach said, definitely jump into the community. We are a friendly bunch. We've heard some awesome feedback that we're really good at listening, which I guess is a unique and novel thing in this world today. So please jump in. We're hosting, actually, in case anything sparked for you today, this sense of, wow, I'm inspired. I really want to do something, but I maybe don't know where to start. There are so many folks who are in those exact same shoes if you are sensing that, or if this is your, life's work. Either way, but especially if you're kind of more on the spectrum of where do I begin? What is my role within this? We're hosting a series of conversations that are actually community led to really bring some fresh energy into 2022 that'll help guide you and support you on that individual journey from just talking about stuff to actually doing something, just starting with one small step. So check out the community. Matt's going to drop that link in the chat. It's in the event pages. It's called Conversation to Action Workshops. There's so many other ways to get involved, y'all. Just really grateful for you. And David, I'd love to just hear any final words that you might have to round us out.
Yeah, I just want to leave you with one thought as we talk about all this macro change. I think too, if you haven't had a chance to engage in Paul Hawkins' work, he launched a book just about a month or two ago around regeneration, and one of the things I had heard him say in talking about that, and this is certainly rings true for us. What can I do is what is always asked. What is it that I can do? And Paul would say something to the effect that, hey, recycling and composting in my backyard, that feels so small. What difference is that going to make? Or maybe it's just so big that there's COP26 and all these nations that are trying to coordinate on things on climate change and the like, or the Farm Bill, and we go, that we're just going to outsource to someone else is going to have to tackle that, because, and then you're stuck in this place in between. And I think what I love, Paul so beautifully stated that that space between is your agency, and you can decide what to participate in, and it doesn't have to make in the world, doesn't have to change the whole system. You actually don't have to do that by yourself. We're here with you, and there's a whole cosmos of companies, of nonprofits, of individuals, teachers who we are excited to connect you with. We are just a degree of separation from so many folks that are so eager to hear from you and understand what it is that you could bring to this conversation. We want to help play that role, whether you're engaging with us and supporting our work, or something else rings more true. We're committed to making that connection for you. And so the way that I always think about likening it is, we could go have a conversation with Monsanto at their board. That might move the needle a whole bunch, maybe not. But I always remember, if you've ever seen someone bite into a vine ripened tomato from their garden the first time, that's the same thing. Like, that is the same thing. The way that their face lights up when they have a tomato for the first time, when they taste a real tomato for the first time, that's as big, that you've just moved a mountain with that one bite. And so I just encourage you all to be compassionate with yourselves. You don't have to solve this whole thing alone. This is a huge, complex, messy space, and we are all finding our way together. So please be patient with yourself, forgive yourself, for not saving the world tomorrow or before the end of 2021. And just know that you have a lot of friends alongside you here who are going to support you along the way. So we just appreciate you all so much. Thank you so much for the support today and for your time in joining us for this conversation. We're so grateful for you all.
Cheers. Well, with that, back into the wild, as I like to say, go enjoy the rest of your day. Huge gratitude, huge presence with you guys. Thank you so much for being here with us on actually the winter solstice as we in the Northern Hemisphere start to move towards more daylight, more growth, towards spring, towards rejuvenation. We're living that alongside each of you. So thank you so, so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day.